class of 57 from Sacred Heart Menlo, and class of 61 from San Diego College for Women. The conference planners invited me to speak about our vital RSCJ mission in Uganda, which Sacred Heart students, as well as alums and other individuals, have been supporting since 2001. I'm very appreciative of this opportunity, and since I am unable to be with you in person, we agreed that I would share by video, taking about 10 minutes to acquaint you with our wonderful mission. Following my short sharing, Jackie Gallo will present her research findings from living and working with our sisters in Congoli High School in northern Uganda. A quote from Pope Francis's recent encyclical on the Sacred Heart caught my attention because these words, the same as those in our RSCJ constitutions, sing a melody of our Sacred Heart mission around the world. One gospel refrain that brings hope to the heart of the poor is the call to be in solidarity with them. We can, for example, contribute our time, our talent, and our treasure to provide a solid Christian education for marginalized youth. As Pope Francis says, our starting point is the gospel, with all that it demands from us of love, forgiveness, justice, and solidarity with those who are poor and rejected by the world. In a similar strain, United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres proclaimed recently, "We must provide girls with a seat at the table through education." As you may already know, the RSCJ and the extended Sacred Heart family are present in over 40 countries and are involved in various ways to provide education of youth at the perimeters of society. At this time, allow me to focus on East Africa. Founded in 1962 by RSCJ educators and nurses from 9 countries, presently our Ugandan-Kenyan province has 63 sisters, of whom 2 are from the United States and Canada, and the rest are locals. Over these 60-plus years, approximately 25 U.S. and Canadian RSCJ served there for a time, and 15 RSCJ from there studied here for their BA and Masters. Presently, RSCJ in Uganda bring the gospel of hope in many ways, including formal education. For example, at the request of their local bishops, RSCJs supervise academic programs, teach, counsel, and secure funding for 3 diocesan schools. St. Bernadette's Primary, a co-ed day school with 1,380 students, is located in a shanty town in eastern Uganda. Cullen High School for Girls, with 450 residential students, is located in a rural farming area in south central Uganda. And Congoli High School for Girls, with 820 residential students, is located in a remote region of northeast Uganda. In addition, Sacred Heart Primary School for Girls was founded in 2003 by the RSCJ, supported by the Sacred Heart family worldwide. This residential school, located in rural south central Uganda, has grown to 840 students. These schools are all inspired by the Sacred Heart educational charism and rooted within the African culture and reality. As the Campaign for Female Education in Africa states, and I quote, "When you set a child on the path to education in rural Africa, something remarkable happens. She transforms her world. This child, when given the chance to learn with confidence and security, will grow into an adult driven by a passion to help others." And you will be pleased to hear that alums from these schools, besides supporting their alma maters, now have their own AASH chapter. And each year, this group visits one of the 4 Ugandan schools to strengthen connections of the heart with spirit talks, laughter, meals, and dance. And they make donations for that school's special projects. You will also be happy to know that 12 alums have returned to teach in one of those schools. And over these 60-plus years, approximately 20 graduates from our schools there have become RSCJ. These RSCJ alums are teachers, school heads, financial officers, counselors, nurses, and serve on provincial and international leadership teams. As for me, I began my service in 2000 when the Uganda-Kenya province leadership asked me to set up a mission support office to raise funds to help them further their educational mission. My more than 20 years of service as director has also included friend raising, promoting awareness of the joys and challenges of the Ugandan people, and articulating how personal and financial support from those in the United States makes a major difference for them continues to bring me much joy. So with this overview, I'm delighted to welcome Jackie Gallo as she continues this story. After living with the RSCJ at our Congoli High School for 1.5 years while teaching in the school and doing research, in the year 2024, Jackie successfully defended her doctoral dissertation at Cambridge University, England. Though not herself a Sacred Heart alum, she is now deeply connected in mind and heart with the Sacred Heart family. For the last few years, I have walked with her with admiration, appreciation, and gratitude. Please join me in welcoming Jackie Gallo.
Good afternoon, everyone. Let's work on the microphone first. It's a real honor and a privilege to be here with you today. I really appreciate this special invitation. I want to thank Kate Sawyer. Thank you so much for your kindness, for your welcome. And obviously, Sister Irene Cullen she's the reason I'm here. And the reason why research can be statistical and it can be dry and boring, but the reason why my research has been a life-changing experience is because she has welcomed me into the Sacred Heart community and welcomed me to her sisters in Uganda. So she is most deserving of the Woman in Conscious Award. What I hope to do today is to bring you on a short journey halfway around the world and leave this presentation with a sense of community, connectedness, and solidarity. Let's see, I've got it, okay. I never imagined I would find myself living in Uganda, performing research on behalf of 2 world-class universities, or speaking with you today. I currently live in Northern California, and I run an independent school. But I am leaving this position in June to return with my heart and my writing to my life in Uganda. I am not a religious sister, and I am not an alumnus, but I am a person who was deeply and positively affected by my own Ursuline education. I have a complicated relationship with the Catholic Church, and so I can tell you that I did not come into this research with a Catholic mindset. I came to this research as a person who was highly influenced by my Ursuline education, and I wanted to know how Catholic education affects girls today. The central question that I ask is, how does an education change a person? And in this context of Northern Uganda, I have found my way somehow to be the niche girls education researcher with nomadic cultures. I ask, how does a Sacred Heart education affect young women from a distinct semi-nomadic community with a unique philosophical understanding of the world? Quality research must be rigorous and it must critique. It must search for answers, hoping to find neither praise nor punishment, but new knowledge about the human experience and existence. In my previous project in Kenya, my research was highly critical of the philosophy and the practices of an American-run Catholic children's home for girls. Despite the opportunity to receive an education, the school actually made the girls isolated and ashamed of their cultural backgrounds, and it disconnected them from their community. And so I share this with you today because my research in a Sacred Heart school finds critique in the local, national, and global orders, in the inequities cast on the marginalized globally. There are economic, social, environmental, and educational barriers that have put and keep people, and in this case, the Karamojong, in poverty. But the biggest ray of hope for the girls that I found in my research is their association with Sacred Heart. And that's what I'm sharing with you today. You are all a part of a global community. You are one of them, and they one of you. As Sister Suzanne Cook earlier encouraged you, I would like to reiterate the call to read Sophie's Gift. Thanks to Sister Cook and her colleagues, there is a clearly articulated global philosophy embedded in today's contemporary global society of what a Sacred Heart education is. The pillars are here, and my goal today is to guide you on a process to humanize people you do not know, to help support the transformation that a Sacred Heart education does. And your job today is to sit in silent contemplation, thinking critically about what I am telling you. And your being here is indeed an intentional practice. And together, as red and blue make purple, we will be seeking a common horizon across borders that I hope will create solidarity in action. To go on this journey, I'm asking you to put aside any general idea or stereotype you have about Africa. There are 54 countries in this continent, after all, thousands of languages and many more cultures. I'm going to ask you to reconsider and reframe the continent and use this presentation as a starting point. Think about the childhood stories we have in our culture to learn about other peoples around the world, just as Moana introduced Polynesian culture to millions of children in this country. In the Disneyverse, Africa is actually the only region without a Disney story about people. Disney chose even to remake a beautiful story about animals, and yet lions do not humanize humans. Today, I don't expect you to know much about Africa. I didn't until it became my work and then my passion. So let's stop and let's look at this aerial photo of a typical village where Sacred Heart girls live. Does it look primitive to you? There's no water, electricity, no road. What about those grass houses? There's a lot of ways that we can look at what is not there. But what if we reframed? And what if we described these villagers as great conservationists, leaving nothing behind, at home with and protective of their Mother Earth in a way that we do not live in this country? What might be significant about the village's circular shape? Perhaps the village demonstrates the high value and connectedness people have with their animals by creating a human security system of housing around their cows and goats. Perhaps they are more authentically connected and respectful of the animal kingdom than we are. I'm not trying to glamorize or glorify poverty. Everyone deserves access to food, clothing, and shelter, at the very least, in a global world of plenty. But I am asking us to remember that the Sacred Heart philosophy, that we should have in common a concern for the whole person and how, and if each person has the ability to reach their God-given potential at every age and every stage of their life in their own cultural context. So let's take a journey. The Karamojong are a semi-nomadic cultural community. They migrated south from Ethiopia in the 1600s, and they're related to other nomadic groups in East Africa. Agro-pastoralists, as they are known, move around. They follow seasonal patterns for water and care for their animals. The cows have been the most important to their livelihood and integral to their history and culture. We know during colonial times that the British created what they called a human zoo to keep the region closed. The post-colonial government was focused on proving their worthiness, Southern Ugandans proving their intelligence, proving their ability to have their own independent country from their former colonizers. Nomads, movers, people who didn't wear clothes or just wore leather skins in the heat of northern Uganda did not fit the post-colonial identity. So the government of Uganda continued to contain the region, and the area was regulated and one needed permission to enter until 2010. What we do know about nomads is that they are clever and there is a sophistication to live this distinct lifestyle, to honor and live with the earth rather than try to tame it. And it worked for a long time. It worked until their grazing lands were taken away by colonial and post-colonial governments. And it worked until the climate began changing because of what humans and so much of what the industrialized West has done to the earth. Since the 1980s, Karamoja has been plagued with the famine of 1980. Today, there is essentially a permanence of food insecurity. There are struggles with political violence, cattle raiding turned violent because the unstable political government, by those civilized enough to run it, left the armories open. In 2010, the region was opened to the outside world, and it is not exotic, but it is isolated. For a variety of economic, political, environmental, and social histories, the people of Karamoja suffer from extreme poverty. Absolute poverty is measured by the minimum amount of money required to meet the basic needs, known as the poverty line. 82% of people live below this poverty line today in Karamoja, which is roughly less than $1.90 a day. Food insecurity is in crisis and emergency levels for almost half of the 1 million residents of the region. And in Karamoja, only 1% of girls will finish their lower secondary or their upper secondary school education, which would be the equivalent of a sophomore or a senior year of high school. These statistics are dire, and this is generally how the region is discussed and described, through statistics. But what do these stats tell us? As an anthropologist, they just tell us the beginning of the story, but it is far from complete. We don't know anything about actual people looking at this slide. We see no humanity in this data. And so what we'll do today is humanize them. The Sacred Heart constitutions demand a concern for the growth of the whole person, a thirst for working towards justice and peace in the world, in response to the cry of the poor, a passion to proclaim the gospel. Now, as an educator and a contemporary feminist anthropologist, I ask you to join me in not talking about people anymore, but thinking and connecting with their humanity as I tried to do in my research. So in the tradition of African storytelling, let us be at one with your sisters, your Sacred Heart alumni, the girls and women of Kangoli in Karamoja. And I share with you one memory. It's just past 7:30 a.m., but the girls have already been up since 4. The dear head teacher says to them, "If there is anybody who is not happy, then you should leave this minute." The girls erupt in laughter, hearing their dear head teacher, a woman admired and loved, who walks through the school gates. Head teacher, Sister Noelina, she is joking with the girls, but the message is very serious. I doubt anyone is tempted to leave these school grounds, as it is the living symbol of new possibilities, different aspirations than their mothers, a life outside of poverty, a future with paid employment, a husband who won't beat them or take on another wife, a dream that in this new world of possibilities, children don't go to bed hungry. And oh yes, let us not forget that the school embodies the dreams that you may one day be fulfilled. The flags have been raised, praise and worship has happened, and now over 600 girls, today over 800 girls, eagerly await news and instructions about this special day. It's Old Girls' Day, OG's Day. The alumni have returned to celebrate the Feast of the Sacred Heart of Jesus. Many alumni have traveled a grueling 12-hour bumpy bus ride from Kampala, disembarking their bus, singing the school anthem. Others began their journeys before sunrise from all over Karamoja, arriving in coordinated skirts, a modern take on the Karamojong traditional wear, and with matching white polo shirts, proudly worn with their high status written in navy blue. OG. The navy blue breast pocket says it all. These girls have made it. These women are the visual representation of a new life. There are no signs of malnutrition in these full-figured women with elaborately and very expensive plaited braided hair, shiny patent leather bags, and they have wide, easy smiles. These old girls are known throughout the region, and they're known to the girls. They're ministers of parliament, government officials, NGO leaders, women religious, business executives, and teachers. But what made the day so special? Why are these OGs the highlight of every girl's school year? The marathon day that began on Friday night and ended well past 11 p.m. on Saturday was memorable for what they represent: a path to dream differently, imagine new possibilities, and fulfill one's God-given potential with the security of an emerging community of women who negotiate values, challenge norms, and are making their way through the world as individuals in a united community. So who are these girls? These are girls who have a strong communitarian mindset. Many African cultures, including the Karamojong, have a strong mindset. Philosopher Mbiti says, "I am because we are, and since we are, therefore I am." Girls have aspirations that are not individual, but they are personal to each student. These are girls who ask, how can my skills and talents help and support my community? How do I follow my dreams for my people? Aspirations of these young women are focused more on the kind of person they wish to be in the world, rather than what they will become. Community acceptance and inclusion is extraordinarily important. These girls are afraid of being defined by what they're not. Perhaps they're not at boarding school. Maybe they're prostitutes. Maybe people think they're lazy because they don't know how to do some of the home chores as well as girls that don't go to school. They're constantly trying to prove who they are and also who they're not. At Kangoli Girls, they have an opportunity to individuate and to find out who they are as young people, but within a communitarian mindset. And they have growth. Oh, I just did that one. There we go. And through that, they're able to find individual passions, but also be a part of their community. They have community service, sports, religious clubs, hobby clubs, a multitude of leadership opportunities. I see on a regular basis girls taking little razors and cutting bits of their soap because they're going to save it to share with elderly women in the village the next time they go on a community service outing. But Kangoli Girls is also academically well known throughout the country. These are young women that prove year after year the academic excellence of their Sacred Heart education. These girls are not just at the top of Karamoja statistics in terms of top academic performance, but amongst the highest in the nation. For the 16 girls that I followed through their last year and a half of high school, these young women all scored high enough on the national exams to pursue post-secondary education. And yet, even in these opportunities, there are no career aspirations for any kind of profession that might be related to the agro-pastoralist community. Integral to achieving these aspirations that they do have is the network and support of the old girls. Imagination of opportunities through the old girls' exposure to different career paths. And their Sacred Heart education is being able to be truly and wholly human in their experience. They have practical reasoning, contemplative thought, express their emotions. They connect with others, with animals and the divine. And that's why a transformational education, a Sacred Heart education, allows them more so than any school I've seen in East Africa, and I've seen a few, to fully experience their humanity. There are economic and social, let's try again. There we go. There are economic and social aspects in the landscape that constrain their aspirations for achievement. Students are highly dependent on foreign aid schemes, but we might ask what happens when international agendas might shift or when the aid is cut off? What happens if your family can no longer afford to send you, or they've sold their last cow or goat to pay last term's tuition? The economic marginality leaves those without bursary schemes unable and oftentimes left out to continue or complete their education. That's why supporting bursary schemes through HEART is so important. Social marginality also exists. The social marginalization is enduring and it's deep throughout the country. There is social discrimination against Karamojangs and other parts of Uganda where more work is found, and so they have limited opportunities because of that discrimination. In their home communities, there is a need to show that their education was worth it. If they don't go to the university, what were they really doing? Was she lying? Was she actually doing street work? And so the social pressures to prove the value of their education run deep. There's social pressure as well and temptation for them to leave school, to get married, to have children, and to defer their dreams. And for the girls themselves, there is limited choice and freedom, and that is characteristic of all schools in Karamoja and throughout Uganda. There's a limited economy. In Karamoja, there is an almost non-existent formal economy for people who are local, and you find people adapting their preferences and deciding maybe new journeys and new avenues because their freedoms and their choices were limited. We find many people relying on luck or fate because opportunity is so scarce. In the family communities, we know that mothers are the most highly supportive people of their daughter's education, and they want them to not just go to school, they want them to go to Kangoli. Kangoli is known as a school that will keep girls safe from the all too rampant sexual abuse that is very shockingly common across Ugandan schools. The vast majority of mothers have little to no education, and yet they value a Sacred Heart education and make every sacrifice for their daughters to have it. These mothers do not reject their living or their cultural values. They do not reject their pastoralism, but they do recognize, and they have a visceral lived experience, that climate change is real, and there is an importance for a family to diversify in the case of disaster, either agriculturally or through global change. Mothers wish for their daughters to have different lives than their own, lives without forced marriage, lives outside of polygamous marriage. They want their daughters to attend Kangoli. And what the mothers all have in common is that the extent of a mother's marginalization correlates directly to whether she views her daughter's education as either for the daughter herself in a relatively economically stable family or as a vehicle for the family improvement, which creates a deep burden of responsibility on the girls in school. In terms of the family and the cultural expectation, education, we know, changes us. It changes everyone. And so it changes girls and their place in their communities. They desire to maintain and remain proud Karamojong people, and they want to stay in their communities. They value a chosen Karamojong marriage. They want a Christian marriage as a protection against polygyny. But there is strain in their relationships with parents and siblings. There is relationship distancing from their out-of-school siblings. Their relationships with their mothers becomes inverted. Mothers become dependent on the daughters for well-being. Students feel wholly responsible for the caring of their family after their educational journey. And yet, students do not realize how unrealistic the expectations are on them. until long after they've graduated, with paid employment being sparse and most jobs that are available pay just enough to be different, but not enough to get out of a cycle of dependency on international foreign aid. Their education changes them, and there's friction and fraction to their worth and their place in their community. And so, in all circumstances of life, wherever our mission leads us, our sole purpose in living is to glorify the heart of Jesus, to discover and to make known his love. So going back to solidarity and connectedness, why does Sister Irene and Heart support Kangoli? Is it the academic excellence, the national reputation? Is it because we say on a global level that it's an important economic investment to invest in girls' education? Those might all be true, but what I think is the most true is that it's the transformational possibilities of a Sacred Heart education. At Kangoli Girls' School, there is a focus both on academic qualifications and holistic personal development. The Old Girls Network provides exposure to resources and support to pursue tertiary education and career paths. But most importantly, it's really through the spiritual development from the Sacred Heart philosophy that allows students to learn the love of Jesus. They learn that they are chosen by God at birth. These opportunities to be of worth, to be of value, to not be marginalized, but to be somebody who has the possibility to improve their life and the life of others, gives them something that they've never experienced, and oftentimes in research we don't even acknowledge could exist. Rather than being needy, they realize that they are needed. Instead of being hopeless, they realize that they can, and helpless and hopeless, they realize that they are helpful, and that does bring them hope. Rather than marginalized, they see themselves as powerful. And at Kangoli, there is religious inclusivity and pluralism. In fact, schoolgirls are not allowed to convert to Catholicism while at school. Their spiritual development, their relationship with God, is more important than choosing which Christian or non-Christian identity they should affiliate. The focus on their spiritual development is more important than dogmatic or catechist teachings. I've seen this firsthand in girls who are telling me, I think I'm going to go talk to Sister because I want to become a Catholic. And they'll come back and they tell me later on that they didn't have to be ashamed or feel like they had to change and become Catholic, but that if they focused on their relationship with God, they would be on the right path. Through the Religious of the Sacred Heart, these young women and these girls experience the love of Jesus. The religious teach them acceptance and love of God, a genuine and whole acceptance of themselves, of their families, of their cultural community, giving them what we call conscientization or critical consciousness to contest and challenge their own culture rather than be ashamed of it or themselves. Something not often found in my experiences in East Africa. And this is possible because of the RSCJ. They are a positive example of women in authority. They have independence from the local government and even the local church hierarchies as an international congregation. Students have an opportunity to view women religious as people of great value and import in the church and the world. There is a positive vision of an enculturated Christianity where you don't have to take off any African culture to be a part of the global church. There's diversity in dress. There's some who embrace wearing a veil and others who don't. And that is in stark contrast to other congregations that you see throughout Uganda. Students, because of the Religious of the Sacred Heart, develop an expanded definition of motherhood. Mothers in and to the community. The girls would tell me often, oh no, sister, she's not like a mother, but she is an actual mother. And motherhood, so highly valued in their community, it gives them an expanded view of who they can be. This is a positive example of countercultural living with meaning. These are highly educated, internationally traveled, and well aware of the world and how it works. These women offer a powerful affirmation to Uganda and to the world of the dignity of Karamojong people in the national landscape. The RSCJ offer encouragement and possibility of living as insiders, outsiders with community connection. Oh, I wanted to skip that one. There we go. And there is one powerful resource that these girls have. It is, again, it's their Sacred Heart connection. What the RSCJ have done by expanding the definition of motherhood that they have modeled in their countercultural existence is a roadmap for students and the old girls to create community and connection. While giving birth is a uniquely important and life-giving offering women give to humanity, it is not the only way to mother. This expansion of understanding motherhood creates mentors, community, and connection among the Sacred Heart alumni and for the growing youth. In a world where an education changes you, Kangoli girls and the old girls create what we call a third space community. Even if their education changes them and their village relationships are strained, they have the old girls network. In a world where an education changes you, and even if you try to go out to the city and to the urban areas in central Uganda, you might be rejected by that society because of discrimination and stereotype, but they still have their old girls connection. And because of their spiritual development as Sacred Heart students and alumni, they have the ability to find acceptance and love through their relationship with God. And it is perhaps the only opportunity one has to not be wrong. And that's not just in Uganda. Think about all of us and what people expect women to be, and you should look like this, and you're supposed to do that, and all of the things. That Sacred Heart spirituality gives you an opportunity to not be wrong. And so I share this with you today. The hard work that Sister Irene has done is truly life-giving to so many people across Uganda and beyond. The Heart Program is one way you can support your Sacred Heart sisters around the world and to have solidarity with them. I've given you all, as a bad teacher would, I gave out the materials before the talk. Every teacher in the room knows that I made a big faux pas. But I gave those to you so that you can see the kind of work that is going on in the Heart Program and what's going on at the Sacred Heart schools across Uganda. There's information if you're interested in learning more, and if it's nothing more than signing up for the updates, I think that would be fantastic. I want to thank you for this. I was saying to somebody earlier that I came to this with a lot of questions, and the hardest part of my thesis was actually explaining that the school wasn't the problem. And oftentimes, schools can be problematic. And the hardest part of my defense was trying to explain just actually what a wonderful world the Religious of the Sacred Heart have created for these young women who are indeed changing the world in the best of ways. Their lives are hard, but they are resilient, they are spiritual, they are connected, and they would love to be connected with all of you. And so I want to thank you for being here. I purposefully tried to end a little early so that we could, if people have questions about the school, they want to know more about it. But I will say that as somebody, as I said at the beginning, I have my own complicated relationship with faith, with religion, with all of these things. And so the idea that a religious community would accept and take me in and allow me to live with them to be fully my own self in that community and have no desire but for me to be free to do my work is an incredible gift. It also speaks to the confidence and the deep foundation of the Sacred Heart philosophy, that they know themselves and they know what they are doing and who they are in this world. And it has been the honor of my life. So thank you for having me today. And I brought a little notepad so I can take notes and follow up on things, but I'll take questions. I think we need the microphone. Mhm.
How did you find the school?
So as I said at the beginning, I did a project in Kenya at a school that I think was very problematic. And what it had the potential of doing is just reinforcing in a very secular academic world the notion that religious education is inherently problematic and bad. And I knew the world was more complicated than such a simplistic view of, especially in countries where religion is really at the forefront. And so my supervisor in Oxford was like, well, you've got your niche now. You do Catholic nomadic schoolgirls. And so it's like, well, you got to find a new school for the PhD. And so there were a lot of schools that were very willing to have me come. And the only school that made it super hard was Sister Irene Cullen connecting me, because I think my emails were not going through to the Ugandan sisters, and who knows what happened. But I was thoroughly vetted over the course of more interviews than I've ever had for my whole life, basically, with Sister Cullen. And I say that with love and appreciation, because there are people who have agendas to try to do something in a certain way. And I really appreciated that. And I knew from those conversations and learning from her that this would be a good fit. And because of her, I was able to meet and connect with the Ugandan sisters.
Thank you so much. I had the wonderful life experience of being taught by Sister Cullen when I was at El Cajon. And I of course, I followed up with her, but may I say, she would never draw attention to herself. And so thank you so much for documenting what she has done, because it's a treasure, and we all can learn from it. And thank you very much.
As you described the girls' Sacred Heart education, that was my education. After 200 years of St. Madeleine Sophie, sure, there's differences in certain parts, but the whole idea of confidence in oneself and standing up for yourself and taking pride in yourself, even though disagreements. And we had over the years in San Diego, Sister Cullen was with us a lot, and in a lot of the meetings. And so she shared over the years her work, and we had the opportunity. Sister Flo Tumunkunde was down with us, and she loved Irish potatoes, and I'm Irish, so the mashed potatoes, that was a bond that way, different things. But for like $750, $800 a year, that's the whole tuition for one of the students at this school. So it just gives you, instead of a Christmas present somewhere else, don't forget the girls, because it's more like what my tuition was at USD 50 years ago. But but thank you very much. And I appreciate it.
And that's boarding school, so it includes food. Yes.
Oh, thank you. So she kind of hinted at my question, but I was curious how the tuition works, considering the poverty. And you mentioned the pressure on the girls to be, live up to what's being spent, and I'm sure there's but do you know more about how they can end up in this school?
Yeah. So what we see primarily is you're talking about large polygynous families. And so you're talking about families that have 3, 4 wives. And usually what will happen is there will be one girl who gets to go to school. And so besides just basic subsistence farming and animal grazing, there's charcoal burning. There's a lot of local brewery. Alcoholism is a problem, but it's also a moneymaker. And so women will brew beer quite often to make those fees, and people sell their animals. For the most part, there's also significant foreign aid. The government of Ireland, as an example, has been a big supporter of the region for decades, and they host the largest scholarship program for girls to attend Kangoli, and for students in general, boys and girls across the region, to be in school.
Thank you so much. This was really great, and it's really wonderful to learn more about what's going on in Uganda. You mentioned that you're going back to Uganda. What are you going back for research, or what are you?
So yeah, I mean, I'm bringing my, yes. So probably 2 things are happening. One is I'm leaving my current position to focus more on that. I don't know how many people like to buy $90 academic books from university libraries, and there's an element of wanting to commercialize the writing. So the way that the thesis is structured is there is very like dry structure in like a first part, but the majority of the thesis is really storytelling, and that was one vignette, one example of how you can display research in a storytelling way. So I'm looking to do that so that the work can be more accessible. And through different fundings that I've done in the past, the Irish government, the Irish Aid, has funded a lot of my research to try to reconnect with some of those organizations. And I think actually the study that I did, which was, I was there in 2017 and 18, there's a desire for that to be something that's better understood across the region. So international organizations in 1980 were first allowed into the region during the famine. The 1980 famine is the most devastating famine in recorded history when it comes to the percentage of the population that died. As a person who was born in 1980, it's a very strange place to be, where there are just very few people who are your age. And it's noticeable. And the Sacred Heart Sisters were there during those times and caring. And so as you've had more organizations come into the picture, there's been an opening of things. And in some ways that's good. And you can think about a lot of positive things that are happening, but there's also, it's a ripe territory for exploitation. And so, but I think there's a real desire that coming from that like 1980 point, education started becoming more invested in the mid 90s, a desire to see not just economic returns, but how are these people different? Because it is also, it's a unique place that was very close to the world. And so like different understanding, like talking to older women, in the village. And I also worked with village women to try to understand like a genealogy of how different generations of women understand school and education. And in those like grandmother generations, you have people with very different conceptions of what that should be and just how the world is. And so I think there's a desire to understand that, because it's not helpful to get a degree if there's not an economy, which is what some of the other schools are really pushing out. And so you have a potential in the region for people to question the value of education if the people who are being educated don't have tangible economic opportunities when they exit. And so part of, what makes the Sacred Heart education so impactful is that despite the challenges of the local economic situation, there are huge qualitative and spiritual returns that the students have because of their Sacred Heart education. Sorry, that was a big answer. Sorry.
Hi, I'm Jen Shurto. Thank you so much, Jackie.
Yes.
I'm calling by your first name, but I know you're a doctor.
No, that's fine.
So
It's fine.
doctor, I'll call you doctor. Thank you so much for that amazing talk. I'm actually an anthropologist myself. I went to the University of Chicago initially for a master's degree, and then I went to Stanford, north of us in LA, for my PhD because the finances were better there. That was my rationale. I don't know if it was a better degree, but I got more housing and more food. So, but anyway, enough about me. Your talk was actually really impressive and very amazing. I felt like, we'll even say awesome. I really felt like you touched upon like the big picture of what, we're supposed to understand as a nation here in the United States, and also globally. And you also touched upon the local level. And I really appreciated most of all, there's this idea of like, it's not voodoo, but like I've been to Senegal. I've never been to Uganda. I've been to Senegal, and they had a practice of like gligli or gigi or something like that. It's like the women would wear something protective on their bodies. My sister was there, and my sister was doing something through the University of Minnesota. So it was like a development organization through the University of Minnesota called MSID, Minnesota School of International Development. And they ended up going to Senegal, and I went to visit her. She also went through the Sacred Heart schools. She also won the Barrow Award, and like she was very smart and very talented. And I kind of want to introduce her to like the groups here and stuff like that. So, but anyway, she's very, she was in Sinja, which is a city in Senegal, and Koungheul, which is a city outside of Dakar, which is the capital. And anyway, so Uganda, do you have anything like this gligli thing, which is like the women would wear, thank you, the women would wear them around their waists and like,
Yeah, I think in cultures around the world, there's a whole variety of different, whether it's a focus on herbal remedies, non-Western medicine, different spiritualities. And so the Karamojong certainly have a variety of practices, and in the realm of like herbal health in particular, in different traditions. I think I would say that I am knowledgeable of that, but my focus is really on the education within the schools. And that's part of the thing that the girls do grapple with, is sort of understanding and how do they conceive of themselves and their own cultural practices, and what is being taught in what is a very Western style education. We had a wonderful debate one time where the girls told me that my tattoos were very pretty, and in the next minute they were scoffing at village girls who had scarification on their face. And so we explored that, and like, why would this be pretty, but a different form of like body alteration is not, from that perspective. And so I think that's, one of the things that we are grappling with in the world, and whether it's like a monoculture from like a Nigerian soap opera of like African, urban culture, or it's a global culture. These are things that we all grapple with. Thank you.
Jackie, thank you. As I told you yesterday, I had the privilege of attending an Eastern African alumni meeting in 2012, and it was DRC, Democratic Republic of Congo, Uganda, Kenya, and somebody from Chad. I assure you, as one alumna to another, you would be so impressed to go to their alumni meetings. They are truly members of parliament. They are business women. They are entrepreneurs. They run their own little mini charities. I assure you, they're most impressive, and they do welcome you with dance. it's wonderful. Thank you, Jackie.
And I'm wearing my sash from the Uganda Association of the Sacred Heart alumni. So that's what I'm wearing today.
At that school, is there a staff or the students do the chores like the cleaning or cooking or do
No,
they?
that's a great question. For a school of 800 girls, there's certainly some staff. And so the cooking aspects, there's a whole team for that. But in general, that's one of the areas that the girls really can have their own leadership is there's whether it's like who's in charge of the dorm and keeping it tidy, who's in charge of the classroom, keeping it tidy, and the girls do their own washing and things like that. To maintain themselves at the boarding school. And, you know, that's something that is very different from, for example, the Kenyan school. And so when I was in the Kenyan school, there were girls being raised to believe that like they were too good for chores. And I mean, I don't, you know, I have a nice job and I do well for myself, but I'm not too good for chores, you know? And so the idea of, making sure that you have like those personal skills as well as an education. Yeah, and so they're very self-sufficient and they participate in all of it to keep the place nice.
You've given us such a window into Uganda, Kenya. I know that I don't think any of us will go home unchanged by what you said. But you also alluded to what a dangerous world it is for the girls there. And I'm wondering, what is it that the nuns do and how do they seem to achieve a realm of safety in a turbulent place?
I almost read you a different story today because one of my favorite stories in my thesis was from the head teacher who yelled my name down the hallway on a Holy Thursday evening and said, Nachap. They call me Nachap over there. I arrived in the weeding season. I'm the girl of the weeding season, Nachap. I don't need that one. And she had gotten into a little bit of a disagreement or a big disagreement with the local parish priest who wanted to change how Mass worked for Holy Thursday. And he wanted the girls to be going out, 600 girls going out at night. Now, around the school, you have men who are out there that are trying to talk to the girls through the fence. They're telling them they don't really need to go to school. Come with me. I'll take care of you, all of this stuff. And so I think there is a level of autonomy that the sisters have in not in an egocentric way, but these are the most highly educated people in the region are the RSCJs. They're world traveled. They have a real understanding of like how the globe works, not just their own society and their own charism and philosophy. And so they have an autonomy that is uncommon and unique. And so they can make decisions. And on that night, I drove 2.5 hours into a mountain to go pick up another priest, because even if we needed a priest, we weren't going to have that one. And we're going to have mass. We're going to have mass inside of the school because that is where the girls will remain safe. And I guarantee you, we would have lost a girl or two that night if we would have taken them out. I guarantee it. And so I think their ability, like in school, we always say it's just really easy if you just focus on what's best for the kid. But the world is more complicated than that. And so I think the confidence that comes from a solid education, a depth of philosophical understanding of oneself and one's purpose, as well as that international congregation autonomy is huge. And I think these women live it. And, to be in a region where the most highly regarded women are RSCJ sisters who wear beautiful African prints and they are fully themselves and at home in who they are, it's a wonderful example for the girls. I think maybe.
Okay. Yeah. Yep. Could you give an example of the type of work the girls would do when they go into the role of supporting their family?
Yeah, and so that's a very good question. So there's very strict gender roles. Men generally, the boys take care of the goats, men take care of the cows. And so depending on the season, they are often not at home. They have temporary places where they stay, and there's, they track them and they track the weather. So the women, the world of the village is the world of women. And so women build their own homes. They build mud houses. So that means that, for example, they're collecting the mud. They are also going into the forest and they're cutting down trees. And I used to go and like cut down branches and things so that we could make the tops of houses. They smear their homes. They have to smear with cow dung every couple of weeks to make sure that the house stays stable. Cooking, gardening, all of the things. And so I think, and they also have to walk for miles upon miles to get water every day. And so when we're talking about like different dangers that exist, walking in isolated places is dangerous for girls. They are living in again, the grazing land has severely decreased over the last 100 years. You have climate change, you have all of these things. And if you are in subsistence farming in that kind of hot climate, arid climate, your farming is literally your life and death. And so there is an extreme pressure on women at home to do those things. Now, when you're in school, then you go to school. And so you can carry water on your head and you can wash your clothes and do those kinds of things. But when you go home, you're not smearing as fast. You're not good at cutting down the trees anymore. And so in a traditional sense, you're less worthy. You have less worth in a village life because you have not been gardening, building homes, and tending to the family in the way that girls who don't go to school have their whole lives. For the girls to be in school? So the idea is that they will get a bursary to go to university and they'll find their way to university. And like I said earlier, the Irish Aid does a lot of support for that. And so if they can get through university, then they can get jobs. Now, one of the things that makes that really hard is that paid employment. For the most part, you're going to move. And so you have these girls that want to stay connected to their communities. They want to be in their region. It's a solid 12-hour drive to Kampala, even now that the road is paved. I was just there last summer. It's still a 12-hour drive. And so what you're finding is this sort of fracture of, if I'm home with my family, in an economic sense, it's very hard to utilize my education. And if I'm going to make economic use of my education, then I have to leave my family is often the trade-off. Mhm.
Thank you very much, Jackie.
Thank you.
So thank you, everyone. That does conclude today's events. We do have a list available. Tonight's, everybody's free to do whatever you would like. We did reserve a space at a restaurant called The Warehouse on Admiralty Way that is not hosted by the conference. But if you guys want to go to someplace different, and there's a list of area attractions. Julie has it. And we look forward to seeing you guys back here for General Session 3 tomorrow. Yes. Oh, the Josephina, we found the deadline for the money that they need to raise is June 1st of this year or 2026. Ooh, yikes. Okay. All right. Thank you. Yes, so there we have a space reserved, but you obviously everybody can do whatever they would like. But we do have a space if people do want to come. All it was 6:30. Sorry, and it's 4199 Admiralty Way is the address. Yep. No, they actually want one check, so we'll have to figure that out, like Zelle or PayPal or whatever. Sure. Well, maybe that could be a group thing, like your 4 kids here. Okay. 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 I don't know if anyone is interested in going to the warehouse. There are some people with cars who are more than welcome to take you if you would like to let us know. Thank you.